Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and here I am in front of the house of William Edward Hartpole Lecky in Dublin. Not in Dublin, in London. What's the difference? See, fooled you. You could easily believe it was Dublin to look at the architecture, because the English are almost the same as us. Anyhow, so Lecky was a renowned Irish 19th century historian, although he lived on to 1903. So Onslow Gardens is a very fine area of Chelsea stroke Kensington. And look how big the house is. He was obviously not short of a few pennies. So Lecky was born in County Dublin in 1838 into a landowning family. And he had English and Scots ancestry. Lecky, I think, is somewhere actually in England. And Hartpole, I presume it comes from Hartlepool, the English town. Anyway, so he was a child when his father died. I think his mother remarried. I'm not sure how many siblings he had. Ooh, better retreat. He was certainly academically gifted. I dare not go too far away from my bicycle because someone might nick my velocipede. It's you know, I have not bothered to chain it up, but because you know, all it takes is a second and they're off. Gazelle-like though I am, I don't think I could catch up with them, because bikes go 3 times faster than people, unless you're going uphill, of course. Anyhow, so back to Lecky, and he went to a school near Armagh, which I don't think exists anymore, Kingstown, and then he went to Cheltenham College, which is in England. I'm just trying to think who else went there. Yeah, John Cleese, a very different. Field Marshal Douglas Haig. Can't think of anyone else renowned who went to that school. So Cheltenham's that. No, I'm thinking of Clifton and Bristol. I can't think of anyone else who went there. Cheltenham as in of the races. Maybe because he wanted to go there because, you know, we Irish people, we love going to the Cheltenham Gold Cup. I've never been to myself. That was the last major event going on here before coronavirus lockdown. So anyway, back to Lecky. Oh look, the sun has put his hat on and he's coming out to play. It was awfully overcast otherwise. Yeah, no, the glowering sky was threatening rain, but fortunately it hasn't pissed on my parade, as it were. Today, Palm Sunday, should have been the university boat race, called off for the first time since the Second World War. They could have run it, or raced it, just with no spectators, block off the bank, but then with the crews be in danger from each other, possibly. So back to Lecky. He then went to Trinity College Dublin, which was the first university in Ireland, founded in 1591. By Elizabeth I. Okay, we'd had a medieval university in Dublin, but that hadn't lasted. The first one that still exists. Apparently there have been other ones in Ireland. Anyway, so back to Lecky. Look, this old man in the window is looking at me. He looks like a Sir Rolf Harris lookalike. I think he's had the knighthood degraded. Maybe he's a bit suspicious of me making this video. Sometimes they are, these coffin dodgers. Anyway, if you don't want people to film your house, then don't live in a blue plaque house. I don't. So back to Lecky. Where was I? So obviously he was reading classics mainly and history. He graduated. He had thought of being ordained in the Church of Ireland. I should have pointed out he was an Anglican. But anyway, I don't think he ever took holy orders in the end. And he later married a Dutch noblewoman, Elizabeth van Dayden, but they were never blessed with progeny. So he got his BA and his MA, but he really made his name as a historian, partly of philosophy, particularly of moral philosophy, and writing histories of England and so on, looking back into Irish history as well, looking at some of the most notable Irish figures of the 18th and 19th century. So the two Henrys, who had been really the main figures in late 18th century Irish politics, Henrys Grattan and Flood, both of whom had been inveterate opponents of the Act of Union. They even formally called our Parliament Grattan's Parliament. And then Henry Flood, he didn't stop him accepting being elected to the House of Commons of the United Kingdom when we joined the UK. But all right, fair enough. You can say, well, I'm against it. It's happened, and I can't change it, so I'll do it and try and mitigate this wrong. Or Henry Grattan was an MP for Ireland and an MP for a constituency in England at the same time in the 18th century. Sat in 2 different legislatures. So back to him. We wrote about Daniel O'Connell, about Dean Jonathan Swift, who wasn't a political figure exactly, quite critical of our relationship with Great Britain, thought we were not well treated, but perhaps more renowned as a writer, Gulliver's Travels and all that. A modest proposal, as in how the children of the impecunious ought to be eaten. but that was simply a satirical, trying to send up the heartless attitude of some of the wealthy towards the penniless. So back to Lecky, was quite well travelled within Western Europe, and he considered democracy, and his prognostications for democracy were gloomy, felt it would lead to decadence, and most people were just ignorant and malevolent. He'd been a liberal in politics, and remember, until the 1870s, every MP in Ireland was either a liberal or a conservative. Okay, we had a repeal movement, but that was gone by the 1870s, and our members of Parliament were almost all upper class. Remember, until the Second Reform Act of 1868, we were, what was I going to say, only the upper class and the middle class could vote. The working class, as a majority of us, were not permitted to vote until that time. But obviously that produced a sea change in Irish politics, and that's when the Home Rule movement, as we know, was founded, the Home Government Association, 1873, and most of the MPs became Home Rulers, coming from middle class backgrounds and occasionally from working class backgrounds. So he slammed the Act of Union, thought it was passed by underhand means, but having been passed, believed it should not be repealed. He thought the 18th century, well, at least the right sort of people were in charge, the propertied classes. I don't think he was sectarian, I'm not sure. And so he had identified the Liberal Party, but he was horrified at the idea of Home Rule on Gladstone's formula, and that's when he split with the Liberal Party as such, became a Liberal Unionist. They were allied to the Conservative Party. They didn't actually formally join the Conservative Party till First World War at a time. And the Conservative Party was willing to meet them halfway, become a little bit liberal, liberal being a highly relative term in the 19th century. Anyway, so just after Gladstone died, he published an autobiography in which he castigated Gladstone. It was not very well received because he was seen as a titan of the time. Lecky was also a minor poet, but indeed he's not held in high regard in terms of poesy. I hasten to add, I've not read a single one of his verses, but I ought to do so. So he's honoured by a huge statue as you enter Trinity College, Dublin, there on College Green, right in the heart of Dublin, Ireland's most illustrious university. Right, so that's probably enough about him. He wrote about democracy in other countries, about in the United States, and so on. Was a bit of a political philosopher. Enough about Lecky. Oh, I should point out, he was elected Member of Parliament for Trinity College Dublin, or as is also known, Dublin University, because universities were, in a way, separate from the city they were in. It goes back to, suppose, the medieval times when there were ecclesiastical foundations and could not be completely controlled by the lay organisation. So one man could have two votes. You could vote for whichever constituency you lived in, and you could vote as a graduate of your university. But I think sometimes you had to come back in person. They voted by acclamation, was say shouting, and I don't remember who judged it. Maybe it was the returning officer say, "Oh, there was a louder noise for this fella than that guy." So the one who got the louder cheers, he's the winner. A very unscientific way of doing it. I'm not sure when they moved to actual ballot boxes, because it'd just be that your supporters made a more row, or could be the other way around, that the returning officer is deliberately judging one candidate to have aroused more noise, even if he knows that's not true, because it's just up to his judgment. So he served for some time as the MP for Dublin University. It's only that after 1918 those were taken away. It still exists in some form in the Republic of Ireland, because in the Senate we have, or the Shannon, perhaps I should pronounce it, I'm saying in Irish, Trinity College Dublin, the graduates have got some representation, senators, likewise the National University of Ireland, on and on. The United Kingdom got rid of that separate representation for graduates in 1950. All right, so that's enough about Lecky. Toodaloo.